This podcast is a member of the Place to Be Nation family. Visit us at placetobenation.com, the only place to be in your pop culture world.
Come on. We call it the place to be. The place to be, yes, it's the place to be. Then I shall be.
It is contagious. It is the place to be, and we are live each and every Monday.
Do you actually need a camera for tout, or is it like part of the program?
Tomorrow comes the place to be.
Yeah, I like big dick myself.
Do you listen at all when I speak on the show?
I'm not the one who thrives on whining about carriages that are 3 inches from my fucking car.
So if it's too much for you and your big cock of the walk Knights of Columbus backpack.
When does it end, JR?
When does it back to the fucking thing? Then what do you want? What do you want?
When does it
You're
end?
making the poor guy making minimum wage while you're sitting there with our Mento going through the coffer. Party people in the place to be.
5 years. 5 years! We've been doing podcasts. And we have this. This is trash.
It's not Austin in LA. It's not Cabana in Chicago. It's not Conrad down in Alabama. Place to Be Nation presents Scott Criscolo and JT Rosero. This is the Place to Be Podcast.
To do worse than Josh Richards.
Exes ain't acting right, and you so glad to fight. Dinners by candlelight. Say it. She got her whipped down to your fingertips, trying that freaky shit. What? Turn on some baby face, just for your lady's sake. You call her baby cake. Say it.
Place to Be Nation, how the fuck are you? Welcome back to the great episode of the one and only Place to Be Podcast. Just Rosero coming to you live here on this Monday evening, back inside the mothership, baby. Alongside, of course, with me is my PIC, Mr. Scott Criscolo. Scott, how are you?
Good evening, JR. Back in the saddle, you and I, for episode 517, longest running fucking episodic golf dender. It has been a week, sir. First time I've spoken with you since. We were both a little worse for wear. You sound like you're
Still, yeah.
pretty much worse for wear.
I think it was a week ago right now. I was already like passed out. I was talking about this on, well, we'll tease it after, but anyway, I was talking about this recently with, about like how the Raw after Mania is like such a big deal for so many people, but for me it's become an annual tradition of sleeping through it or missing it because I'm so fucking exhausted from like the weekend. I barely can survive it usually. So I missed most of last week's Raw, just zonked out on my couch. And yeah, it took me a good 4 or 5 days to really, I want to say by Thursday, I was starting to feel like kind of back to normal. It's not even just like a hangover from foreign substances. It's just like the hangover of the fantasy world you live in for 3 days or 4 days. Mm-hmm. Getting back to reality is real tough. And last year was hard. This year was just as hard. So, but it was a great time. I don't think we need to probably go into too much detail. You covered all the wrestling stuff on Main Event in great detail, which is a really good episode. Check that out. You had Kevin Kelly on to break down the G1. You had Jennifer Smith, who was there live, Johnny Reckless, who was there for some of it, I believe, and then brother Nate Milton, of course, given the TV perspective. So I think you exhausted the Mania weekend review. Yes. And then I was privy to be on Talkin' Pop, and that should be dropping, I think, probably sometime soon, with Jenny and Tim. And her and I went through the weekend from a non-wrestling perspective, like all the shenanigans and bullshit and fuck shit junk. So listen to that, and if you piece those two things together, you can pretty much get all of our takes on what the weekend was. So we won't belabor it. It was a great time. Is there any kind of one moment that sticks out for you, Scott, that you just want to call out?
I've never knew, as long as I've known him, one of both our favorite people, you in particular, but I as well, the dexterity of one Mark Poirier is how he got very high in the air on Friday night at TakeOver to leap into your voluptuous arms.
Oh, you know what? There you go. You uncovered a new I forgot to tell that part on Talkin' Pop. So
okay.
Caught some new ground. Yes, Mark Poirier assaulted me in the Barclays Center after NXT, but it was beautiful. Humped me like a little lemur. Just wept on me.
Friday was just quickly. Friday was great. Saturday was awesome. Saw Kevin walk through the con. Johnny Hollywood was a little trepidatious going to see Caitlyn, as did I. I wanted to too.
Caitlyn was there? I don't remember anything.
Yeah, she was.
Okay.
Yeah, Caitlyn was there. She was on the back. She was on the back corner with Scott Steiner.
I never left where Tony Schiavone was in the front.
I know. I walked around a little bit just to see all of the fucking decrepids, but And of course, Saturday night again, we thanked him 1,000 times, Mr. Sean Kidd.
Yes.
And for Saturday night was awesome. And Sunday was just Sunday was Sunday.
Oh, yeah,
what
amazing.
Most remember of it.
Weather was amazing. Atmosphere was amazing. All of it.
It was great. But yeah, I agree with you. Monday, I got through Raw, but Tuesday really was the day that I literally felt like I got hit by a bus. And I think I put the TV on Tuesday night, and I got through about, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes of SmackDown, and I closed my eyes on the couch here, and the next time I opened them, it was like 2 a.m. I literally killed through like 6 hours, and then I went in my room and went to bed and got up like at 9. So I said, I guess the gym wasn't happening, but I probably slept a solid 13 hours. And then, like you said, I would say probably about midday Thursday, I probably got back into the physical groove.
Yeah, I worked from home Tuesday, and I was just like a wreck. I mean, I literally just laid on the couch with my computer open. I think I had one meeting and then did nothing else. And Wednesday I went in the office, but was still just a mess. And then by Thursday, I was starting to feel back to normal. But it's just an amalgamation of stuff. Just
right. Speaking of meetings, how the hell did fucking Cowboy scrape himself up and actually have like a regular day Monday?
I don't know. And then, we were trying to keep things a little hush-hush because we didn't want to be, the wrestling boys on the fucking team. But I think he ended up having to say it because A, he was like burnt like I was. And B,
me too.
He was exhausted and whatever. He ended up. But right. It is not known that I was with him. So there was just him and his nephew in their eyes. All right, but that's enough. But definitely check out those 2 shows to get that. And then also, I've mentioned this a couple of times already, but the reaction show was great with Chris and Devin. And our guest here tonight was exemplary in editing in the middle of the night to make sure that thing was posted like bright and early Monday morning, very early on East Coast time. So anyone who was looking forward to listen to it, I know I listened to it to get me on the ride home from Norwalk to drop Charlie off and then home. So appreciated that. But a lot of great coverage at PlayStation.com on Mania Weekend from an audio point of view. And you can check all that out across our feeds. So be sure to do that. But I want to go ahead and bring in our guest. And we're talking off air because I believe he now holds the record officially for the biggest spread between appearances. Not between appearances. He's been on a bunch. But from his first appearance to his now most recent is quite the gap. He was with us in episode 50 for the very first time because he won a contest and sang a song. And that is the one and only Mr. Todd Weber. Todd, how are you? The manager, I'm sorry.
Well, when you think spread and gap, you think the manager, Todd Weber. How are you, gentlemen? Thank you for this fine privilege, this honor of returning to the mothership after so long, after 467 episodes, not counting Christmas or Halloween specials where I will come in and sing my songs, my novelty songs.
You did a real episode though. You did was it the 5th anniversary? It was like Taboo Tuesday or something. Remember you and Jordan joined us? Okay, so you've done
that was
stuff.
a long time.
Not just holidays.
3 years is a long time, Hogan.
God, it is a long time. By the way, though, I feel like you're have a book coming out or something, and you're making the tour. Like I talked to you on Binge Please, and then you did the Conversation Comics gimmick, and now here we are with that. I feel like you're really making the rounds the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I recently was on a show with Andy Atherton where we talked about swingers, and I'm taping a Freak Out Drive-In very soon. Yeah, I'm becoming my own version of the Village Bicycle.
Yes, you're the 2019 Jenny. So, glad to have you here. Excited to have you here, even though I forgot to send you the show until like 3 hours ago. But we're good. You watched it. You prepped.
That's right. Well, one of these matches was something I've watched at least a dozen times.
Okay, so Judy Martin.
We'll talk about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, all right, Scott.
We want to thank T-Web, by the way, quickly before we continue. One more Mania thing. We want to thank T-Web for helping us with some, and you were, there were a lot of people that we missed, T-Web, but you were most definitely top of the list of those we missed. You were revered last weekend, big time. Yes,
well, I appreciate it. And I had scheduled a trip to go, but it didn't work out this time. And my streak is over. I'd been to 4 in a row, and now I've got to start over. Hopefully, I will resume in Tampa. But going to New York and seeing the nation, I really was looking forward to it, and especially looking forward to meeting Scott Criscolo for the first time. I think that would have been I think universes would have collided if we would have had to do the superpowers or the mega powers handshake.
That's right. That's right. I know. But hopefully Tampa.
We're getting Scott. I told Scott about halfway through his tailgate. I'm like, you went to 29, but it's a different animal now. Once you've experienced this, you're kind of in. now. You can't not go. Like if you're just sitting, as you experienced, Todd, it's just tough to then sit on the couch. So I told Scott, I said, set up your savings account, start putting in some money each week, and you'll be good to go by next March in April. Because once you get the bug, it's hard. And I've been trying to explain to people that haven't done it, like you just don't get it. Like once you go, it's just, especially I think with our group and the way we're set up, it's just real hard to. I'm sorry not to pile on. I'm like rubbing it in your face.
Okay.
But I'm trying to
made my peace with it.
I'm trying to point out is that next year you're both going to be there. So, and a great look forward to seeing you both there. So that'll be a lot of fun. Anyway, before we get too wispy, let's move on. So Scott, why don't you go ahead and set up our show for tonight?
All right, let us get into the final stop on our road to not Tampa or MetLife, but close to MetLife to a certain extent, Atlantic City, New Jersey, which is where we'll be 2 weeks from this date. But tonight, it is March 18th, 1989, from, of course, a place we were at again, JR, last Saturday night, Madison Square Garden on 33rd and 7th. Barbie girl blasting up and down the block. And we are in our office for the final big show before WrestleMania XXXV. Now, this is a Saturday matinee, which is kind of rare for a MSG house show. So this might be, JR, to this point in our reboot, JR and T-Web, that this is now, there was not one, not two, not even three, 5 house shows on this day.
Jeez.
Two doubleheaders. 2 matinees and 2 nights. The standalone show was at the Coliseum in Spokane, Washington.
Jeez.
Way out in the boons. Here was your card. We don't have results, but this is courtesy of our good friend Mr. Graham Kaufman in the history of WWE.com. Scott Casey versus Barry Horowitz. Sam Houston versus Danny Davis. Oof. Poor Spokane. The Blue Blazer versus Ron Bass. Bret Hart against the Honky Tonk Man. Ted DiBiase took on Tito Santana. Big John Studd versus Akeem. And the main event was Jake Roberts against Andre the Giant. There was a doubleheader in the state of Ohio. I don't know which was the day and which was the night, but one was at the Ohio Center in Columbus, Ohio. It did, and it included your World Tag Team Champions, Demolition. Speaking of Demolition, they were in the night show, or the day show. I'm assuming the Columbus was the day show, because the other show was the Riverfront Coliseum in Cincinnati. So I'm going to assume that was the night show, because Cincinnati's a little bit big metropolis than Columbus. Your card, Tim Horner, JR's new favorite wrestler, Tim Horner, against Iron Mike Sharp. Hillbilly Jim took on Boris Zhukov. Jim the Anvil Neidhart against Greg the Hammer Valentine. Rick Martel was taking on King Hawk. Ooh, this looks a lot like our last house show.
I'll say hopefully that match is better than the one we watched.
Demolition was taking on the Powers of Pain in a non-title, no DQ match. We had Brutus Beefcake taking on Ravishing Rick Rude, and in the main event, title, I don't know if it was title versus title, but it was champion versus champion, as your world champion, Randy Savage, took on your intercontinental champion, The Ultimate Warrior. So pretty much almost exactly the same card as we had in February. And as we said, this was a matinee, because at night they trucked up 95 guys and went to the Boston Garden. So a rarity for New York and Boston in the same day. I'm sure it happened a little more often maybe earlier in the decade, but this is the first time for us, JR. I don't think we've seen New York and Boston in the same day. I will not get into the card because the matches are exactly the same. So, of course, we'll wait till we actually do our show.
It's the city of losers.
Yes, a bunch of losers.
Why would they do that? Just, why would they have so many house shows on the same day? Are they trying to get as much liquid as they can for WrestleMania 5? Are they knocking off the ring rest? What's going on with 5 shows in one day?
I don't know. Well, there's no doubt, Todd, that and JR and I have seen this often. Vince definitely broke the roster into thirds. That's common. But being a Saturday, they probably had. I mean, it's not often him and I have had a Saturday house show. Usually, the only Saturdays we do are the Saturday night main events, so we don't really see the house shows per se. But this is the first time that there's been not one but 2 double headers,
right?
Or two loops.
And it's not like they have. There's no Mania matches really on the cards, so it's not like it's a test run or practice run for these guys. Yeah, right. I don't know, Todd. It might have just been an anomaly that
busy.
Yeah, this we're trying to cram, because I know normally post Mania they kind of do the Europe thing and take some time off, right? So maybe they're just trying to bang out as much as they could before that break. I don't know. Yeah, may just happen
weird,
to
but
be
it's a lot.
Saturday worked out for them to hit all those spots, but.
And we're not talking, two rinky dinks either, at least for this loop.
Right.
I mean, obviously the show we're about to give you is identical to the show that was that evening up at the Garden. So they definitely didn't slack off. And once we go through the card with you, listeners, you'll see that both these cards were not exactly slack off cards either.
Yeah.
Not exactly what the poor bastards in Spokane got clearly, but
Spokane.
Fucking Spokane. So, there I have that. JR, any tidbits before we begin?
Just one. We have a big arrival, and he's in the announce booth tonight, and that is Noah Anthony Schiavone, also known as Tony Schiavone, also known as the guy who flirted hard with Jennifer Smith at WrestleCon.
Yes,
as the video evidenced. Born November 7th, 1957 in Craigsville, Virginia. Schiavone broadcast alongside David Crockett starting 1983 through 1989 on the Superstation TBS. Hosted NWA World Championship Wrestling live in front of the studio audience in Atlanta. The show aired, of course, on Saturday mornings on TBS and Saturday evenings at 6 p.m. were the two that he was part of. He did pay-per-views and everything else, obviously. He was very, very active. He left Crockett / WCW to head to the WWF in April of 89, signed a one-year contract. So he'll be around for a bit, Scott. We'll see him a decent amount, actually, during that year in various roles.
Yep.
I believe he also had some backstage issue at this time. I know later he would go for various roles and get rebuked and kind of be pissed off, but I believe it was during this time he was passed over for like a booking job, I think, and it might have been for Jim Ross. I don't know. Todd, do you know any of the details around that? I think this was what led him to leaving.
Yeah, I seem to think, well, Ross came into WCW Turner with the folding of the UWF and the merger. And so that kind of created a redundancy with announcers. And so Tony came up north, but I don't know anything about him trying to become a producer for Vince.
Well, not for Vince, but I thought in Crockett he got passed over.
Okay, well that would make sense because Ross was a star on the rise and Tony had been there for a little bit. So yeah, that's always kind of what I assumed, is there was just not enough room for the two of them at that point.
Right. I feel like it was something along those lines. I know later he gets passed over for Bischoff, like in '93 or whatever. But and then I think Ross has the same issues when he leaves. Like I think Schiavone and others they kind of put him out of position there as well. So that's it really. So that brings us inside the Garden. As Scott mentioned, our final stop on the road to Mania. Tony and Lord Al have the call tonight. Set up the show for us. And our opener is a tag team bout featuring the Young Stallions taking on Los Conquistadores. The Stallions are apparently still hanging on as a team. We've kind of seen them come and go. They've worked singles a bunch, but get working together here as a team. Tonight, the Conquistadors doing their thing, putting around. They get booed. I really enjoyed Rod Trongard. We talked a lot about him. But Tony is like so much more polished and smooth right out of the gate. Like you can tell all of that professional experience for a major network has paid off for him. He is like on point, smooth announcer voice, everything covered. His promotion is on point. His calling of the match is on point. His historical notes, like everything is right on. It's such a more smooth experience. You could see why Vince would have probably liked a guy like him. Youngish, pretty good looking guy, no accent. So like he actually seems like a pretty good fit, which ends up being surprising that he stays as long as he does. You'd think it's someone that would have maybe fit Vince's view of what an announcer would look like, knowing what we know. You guys agree, disagree?
Oh, there's no doubt. I'll get more to Tony during my the first match comments, but I agree 100%. And you're right. I liked Ron, Trotty, but I think the issue, it seemed like he didn't really know the feuds and stuff. At least Tony was given a little background and things like that. And I'll get into it more through my comments, but he definitely even made Alfred better too. But I'll get more into that as we move on.
Yeah, it felt like Alfred was working a little harder than he normally does with this. We got a little bit more detail and background on moves and but yeah, Tony's addition makes these shows feel a little bit more professional. Cable, we're not just New York, but this is a show that could be on primetime wrestling or something like that. And yeah, definitely like Tony's presentation, and he knows how to call the action in a way that the big spots stand out.
Yep, agreed. All right, so we open up with Powers, and one of the Conquistadors start off with Powers fending off a quick attack, eventually cleaning house. He stays in control. goes to an armbar. Roma gets a tag and works the arm as well. The Conquistadors swap in and out, but the Stallions keep hold of the arm and mix in some double-team offense as they dominate. The arm work continues until we get a twist, and the Conquistadors run some trickery, swap off while the ref is tied, and they start to work the neck and head of Roma. They tag on and off and double-team wherever they can, choking away. They start to pick up some near falls as the crowd rallies Paul, who nearly steals a win on a sunset flip. Conquistadors stay on top and go to a nerve hold as this just ebbs on. Roma tries to break a side headlock, but wilts on a slam, and the Conquistadors keep on offense. The crowd stays with Roma here. Eventually, he comes firing up with hard right hands, but then he runs into a boot. A moment later, Roma lands a boot and makes the big tag. Powers comes in hot, cleans house. Roma tags right back in, hits a missile dropkick for the win. Perfectly fine, acceptable tag match, basic formula stuff, and a fine opener for two teams that's going nowhere fast. The Stallions are on their very last, their last hooves. Not much more left there, and the Conquistadors are just job fodder. But it's fine. This was, we've seen some real dog shit openers. We've seen some decent ones. This was right in the middle. 2 stars, fine enough, but didn't overstay its welcome, Scott.
I actually gave it 2.5. I actually liked it. Your match time, 13:19. So we're actually gonna have some length in a good hunk of our matches tonight. I liked it. I didn't think it was that bad. What's funny is, you and I have been talking about for a while. We thought they were never coming back because you're right. The last several house shows we've had one or the other, and the other's been in another city. So I don't think you and I even realized they were still together, and maybe this was just a filler for them. They would wrestle that evening against them in Boston. I think they win there too. But yeah, no, I liked it too. I'll actually give an extra half star. I think when they're on their game, I have to be honest about this. Except when they wrestle the Shadows 1,000 times on fucking primetime, Roma and Powers actually has a pretty decent chemistry. Had they actually given a crap about them, maybe gave them kind of like an underdog role and let them roll a little bit, maybe they had something. I don't know. But I thought they were fine. I thought they were really good, Todd. Good, solid opener. Good back and forth. Conquistadors, we know who they are. They're serviceable. They got the job done.
Literally, yes. There was a lot to like about the Young Stallions back in the day. Of course, they go all the way back to Survivor Series 87. So they'd been together as a team. And as a kid who was watching it a lot back then, it was fun to kind of latch onto the career of Paul Roma, who started out as a job guy with a good look and then got into this team that got pushed. This team in this match against Conquistadors has a little bit of polish. You do get some tight double team moves, but they were on their last legs apparently. Roma said that he was not the biggest fan of Powers after this. He had Alicia Fox type issues, shall we say. So, in
fairness, I don't think Rome was a fan of anyone.
That's true. Yeah. This is considered the source, but he was a guy that I watched go from job guy to becoming somebody who was getting a little bit of a push. But there were so many great tag teams at this point that they were never going to really break through. They didn't have what it took to become really, really special. This opening match, I liked it enough as an opener. I felt it was a little long. I also gave it 2.5 stars.
Yeah, I thought as we go through the rest of Paul Roma's career, yeah, he really doesn't like anybody. But yeah, no, I thought it was really solid. And again, you got solid workers all around there, and again, even though they didn't last too much longer, at least they showed their oats in this one. So Stallions oats, but the Young Stallions do get the victory, and they were young. Italian-looking guys, in the Northeast, so they always got an extra little pop from the Garden
New York,
crowd.
yeah.
So it worked out well for them.
All right, we got the opposite of solid in this next one, as our women's champion, Rockin' Robin, takes on our old friend Judy Martin in the Royal Rumble rematch that nobody asked for. Robin continues a terrible reign, and poor Judy is again tasked to carry her. And I think Judy deserves so much better than this slop. And I was actually, part of me was wondering if they were going to do a swap here, or if they could have done something. I know they had plans originally for the women's title, but could they have done something where Judy wins it here and then Robin, almost like a WrestleMania 1 type thing? But that card is already stacked enough. I think they probably realized Robin sucked enough that it wasn't worth shoehorning her in on that card. Tony does tell us that Robin will be singing "America the Beautiful" at WrestleMania, so we get that. Judy wastes no time shoving Robin hard to the floor. Robin gets up and runs around doing laps and sneaks in using her quickness, as Tony calls it. I would deem that to be something else. Robin unloads some soft strikes in a clothesline. Robin gets a near fall, but misses a terrible dropkick by literally like 30 feet. And Al just giggles. Tony makes like a tit reference in there. It's just awful. Judy keeps trying just lazy pins in between working the arm. Robin takes back over. She works the arm, as Al says. She's back to her championship form now. Both ladies wipe each other out with clotheslines and dropkick each other. Robin nabs control as Al shits on her pin attempts. Robin tosses some weak elbows and hits a shoulder tackle and ugly leg drop that makes Alfred laugh again. Judy survives the vicious offense as the crowd just starts chanting boring. Robin gets a bulldog, but Judy gets her foot on the ropes to fucking keep this thing going. That surprised me. Robin argues with the ref. Judy slugs her down and gets to work, but looks completely gassed. Robin battles back again, but Judy gets a suplex or two, and Judy's just moving so slow here. Like, she was completely winded. She gets some decent strikes. Al basically says if she was at her best at all tonight, she'd be champ right now. So basically shitting on both women. Judy whiffs on a charge, and Robin rolls her up for the win. I actually thought this was, sadly enough, a little bit better than the Rumble, as Judy's offense was solid, and Robin wasn't as awkward as she was there, but she still fucking sucks. I mean, just no redeemable qualities. And this division is completely on life support. It is done. Poor Judy doesn't deserve to go out like this. And you could tell why they scrapped any kind of likely Sherry-Robin Mania match. It seemed like it was originally on the books for that show, and I wouldn't put Robin on big-time prime pay-per-view either at this point. On a stage like Mania, this is not enough there. Todd, what did you think? I went 1 star. Todd, what did you think of this one?
Well, first off, let me say thank you for being a friend, JT. Scott. Always wanted to say that to you. This is not good. Judy Martin gets gassed about halfway through this match. Ugh. Rockin' Robin is sloppy and hard to get behind as a champion. Sometimes it feels like she's the female equivalent of Sam Houston, which is appropriate because they are brother and sister. Yeah. And you would think as Grizzly Smith's daughter, she would have been used to performing for crowds more than she was here. So, yeah, not good at all. This is just kind of embarrassing, and you see Judy calling spots all the way throughout the match. So it went on about 4 minutes too long, and I can't give it more than 1 star.
Take a wild guess. I don't know if you guys looked. I doubt you. I mean, if you did, that's cool. But how long do you think this match was?
45 minutes.
7.5 minutes.
Right down the middle. 9:59, which was of course about 9:59. I know I always say that, but this time the whole thing was too long.
I mean, given these two, almost 10 minutes is like death.
Yeah, I gave this a half star. This was fucking. I don't even know why Vince bothered at this point. I thought the Rumble should have been. I mean, maybe this was just a filler because 2/3 of the rest of the roster was somewhere else in the world. I know we make fun of her, and I'd like to think that at some point she'll probably go into the Hall of Fame, maybe in the what do you call it, the legacy wing or whatever the hell it is. But Judy Martin deserves a decent amount of credit. She's had to, if you think about over the last JR, even the 4 years we've been doing, the 3.5 years we've been doing, well, let's see, 85, 4.5 years at this point, of MSG shows. I mean, she's been handed some fucking slop. I mean, it's now look, she's not, like any work rate marvel or anything, but at the same time, Judy has never had to really go like balls out or anything. She had that awesome fucking slugfest. Where it was her and Debbie Peterson, right? That had that awesome fucking
Desiree.
Slugfest.
Yeah, that was
Desiree.
A good one.
I mean, Desiree Peterson.
And she did great in the Jumping Bomb Angels matches too. And it's criminally wasted during this run toward the tail end here. We should have had her as the wily old face veteran taking on Sherry as like the heel up and comer. Like that would have been the feud they should have ran with if they wanted to have any semblance of this division still alive. But
did Vince ever have face lady wrestlers like that though? That's just not his MO. Was she ever a face? I'm trying to.
Yeah, late
I never
at the
watched
very end, like late 87.
Yeah.
Well, like late 87.
Not in life, but
definitely not. It's funny. Very fitting. I was visiting my grandmother in the nursing home yesterday, and like literally on 3 different TVs as I walked down the hall, it was just the Golden Girls theme and the Golden Girls playing. I'm like, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy in there. Anyway, anything else you have on that one, Scott?
Well, I was just saying that Judy, I mean, she's had to shovel a lot of shit in the 4.5 years that you and I have been doing the MSG house shows. She's picked some fucking crap she's had to deal with. Where did anybody think? I mean, there's been a ton of nepotism cases or nepotism theories in the history of wrestling, but this has got to be the worst. I mean, just because she was Jake's stepsister, or
I just don't think I can't imagine Jake giving a shit though. I can't imagine him caring. Like
me neither. Like she's fucking horrible. She's absolutely horrible. She has zero, and I mean zero wrestling ability. Zero. She stands around. She does a couple of kicks. She has no psychology. She has no idea what the hell she's doing. It's almost like she sometimes stands there and goes, "Why am I here?" I mean, she is terrible, literally terrible. And she obviously there's more things she sucks at than wrestling, as we'll find out at WrestleMania 5. But I mean, it's terrible. This is brutal. I mean, I gave Judy the half star. It's awful. And at this point, I don't even think Vince gave a fuck about belts or anything. I think he was just filling cards. It's pretty evident that after this, and I'm sure their match, again, as we mentioned earlier, this card is mirrored in Boston. And how long was that one? This one was 9:59. That was
saying they probably ran the same match.
Yeah, I would say so. Let's see. It was 7:45. Fuck, I'd rather have had that one. It was 2 minutes short.
We got fucked.
But
I don't think there's much more. I mean, this may actually. I guess we see her at Mania, but I wonder if we see her again at all. Well, actually, yeah, she's around until June. I don't know if we'll see her at MSG again, but okay. The women's title, she is around. Her and Judy pretty much. They go, excuse me, around the horn from now till June.
Yeah,
just
I mean,
the two of them.
It's not good. I mean, Todd, you give her an F for what she does at WrestleMania.
That is a tough year for Judy Martin. Having to hang on with Robin around the horn for 6 months.
Yeah, that's just not good. Half star, absolute fucking garbage. Just total garbage.
Yeah, I'm curious if she shows up again for us or if they're done. Let's see real quick here. We don't see her again at MSG, and there's no way she's on any other thing we watch. So this is it. This is kind of our eulogy, I guess, for the women's title. After Mania, obviously, Sherry moves into a managerial role, so she's done. Robin, let's see. In the meantime, WrestleMania 5, she continued to defend the title against Martin through the summer of '89 and held the title until 1990 when she left the company. The title was retired due to inactivity, and she is still in possession of the belt, which remained inactive until 1993. She continued to use her ring name after leaving the company. In 1990, Hiro Matsuda, who had feuded with her father, picked Smith the tour for All Japan. Smith teamed with Luna Vachon. The Japanese bookers gave the girls positive review for their work. The U.S., she defeated Peggy Lee Leather to win the Ladies Major League Wrestling International Championship. Still occasionally defended the WWF Women's title for a while. In May of 91, she defended it against Medusa on a Great Lakes Wrestling Association event. June 9th, 91, defeated Candy Devine at the UWF to become the first ever UWF Women's Champion at Beach Brawl. And also competed in the Ladies Professional Wrestling Association, LPWA, teaming with Wendy Richter. Competed at their only pay-per-view. That's really about it. She married a man named Harvey Zitron, who was sentenced to 81 months in federal prison for filing false tax returns, identity theft, and device fraud. They got divorced. She opened a telemarketing company. And later opened a real estate appraisal business. Had a drinking problem, but got clean. In 2005, her home and belongings were destroyed by Hurricane Katrina, and now runs a real estate appraisal business in Hammond, Louisiana. So there you go. Some background on where Rock and Robin. Sounds like she at least got cleaned up and got her life in order. So good for her. And I'm just glad we don't have to watch her again. So we won't go through the rest of the women, but so this is our final foray until... We'll see stuff here and there with the women, Scott, but as far as the division, we're done until the end of '93. So,
do we see Judy Martin again?
No, we don't see Judy again either.
See if I'm looking up and all right. Oh, go ahead. I'm gonna look up to see if we have any Judy Martin. Oh yeah, here we go. Judy. Let's see. She left. She continued until the phased out women's division. All right. So after she left the WWF in '89. So she competed AWA. She feuded with Wendy Richter, left the company. So she won Glamour Girls. Yeah. She died. Oh, no, she's still alive. She's 63.
That's quite the assumption.
She's 63 now?
Well, she died. Yeah, huh? So she would have been... There's no way she's only 63
34 now. Then? Or whatever.
Yeah, she was born October 8th, 1955.
Jeez.
She lives in Columbia, South Carolina. That sounds fitting.
She aged fucking hard during that time. Yeah, I don't know. Here she looks like in her 50s, I would guess.
She was actually part of that. After her retirement, she worked in law enforcement and then transcribed medical records. She was part of the class action suit that friggin' attorney guy did for all the brain injuries. I would have had brain injuries if I had to wrestle Rockin' Robin too.
Right. That's her bigger case. Never mind brain injuries. Her bigger issue was that she was stuck working Rockin' Robin for a year.
Yes, and she aged very fast because of it.
All right, that's enough.
She was on the October 26th episode. She was on the October 26th, 91. She's on the October 19th, 91 edition of WCW Saturday Night. Interesting.
Oh boy.
And then she wrestled Bambi. But she faced out the women's division on Valets. Okay, there you go. So anyway, there you go.
All right, let's move on. The Fink introduces Lanny Poffo for a special WrestleMania poem, and he gets booed, especially for ripping on Hulk Hogan, and he backs Randy Savage. He's in his wrestling trunks as well, and you can see the interesting early signs of a heel turn to maybe give Lanny some juice. So, 4 years into his run, we'll see if they try and heat him up a bit here. That brings us to a nice little bounce-back match after the last shit show we had to sit through, and that is Rugged Ronnie Garvin taking on Mr. Perfect Kurt Hennig, who still has the Hennig name attached in his introduction. Al laughs about Lanny's poem, says he surprised him, even though he thought it had some logic behind it. Garvin throws a towel to the crowd, and Al says this made me laugh a lot. He said he's throwing the hotel towels into the crowd. He's been taking them from the hotel and throwing them into the crowd. Al is definitely, like Todd mentioned, working hard tonight. It talks about Hennig's perfect record as well. Hennig charges but walks into a great straight right hand that just sends him flying to the floor. Garvin smacks him again when he gets in. Stunning perfect. The two start trading slaps and chops, and the crowd is really into it, especially when Garvin's slap sends Perfect up and over the top. Perfect comes in and grabs a headlock, hanging on, grinds him to the mat. Garvin powers up to his feet and forces the hold open, but Perfect quickly twists back into a chin lock. Garvin breaks free again and unloads a hot flurry of punches and big headbutt, and then slugs Perfect to the floor. Garvin locks in a sleeper, but Perfect runs him into the corner to break it up. Garvin recovers and keeps unloading, gets two for a roll-up. Perfect blocks a pile driver with a backdrop, but Garvin gets a sunset flip for a really close near fall. Perfect tries a sunset flip, but Garvin blocks it with a punch and drops an elbow for two. The crowd's rocking as Garvin keeps battering away until the two collide shoulders and collapse. Garvin crawls over and hits a high cross body off the top, but Perfect rolls through and steals the win. This is a fucking banger. Comes up just short, though, really taking off. Like, God, give me like 6 more minutes. Get rid of Judy and Robin and give that 9 here, and we are really cooking with a hidden gem. I thought Garvin has looked great. Perfect just fed and fed and fed right into the end, and the crowd was with him pretty much the whole way. This was real fun. I went 3 stars, but it was on its way to something greater before it ended. And Garvin has been super entertaining since his arrival, and Perfect continues to work up the ladder. So I really, really dug this, Scott. It was a nice little hidden treat. I don't want to call it a full gem, but it was a nice little treat.
I agree. I also gave it 3 stars. Your match time, 12:21. So what you're saying is if we had gotten up into maybe this would have been a good draw match, perhaps. Maybe if we got into.
Nah, you're gonna get Perfect to win. Yeah. How long was it?
12:21.
Yeah, give me like 18, something like that. You know what I mean? That's fine.
Yeah. Garvin is on one of is on that list of mine of guys I've never been a huge fan of, mostly because of his terrible promo cutting. And I know Chad and I've had debates about this for years, but I've never totally diminished Garvin's in-ring. I've never doubted that he was a good in-ring guy. I just could never stand his promos. His promos I never liked, but this is a great match because. And I've said this before, JR, when we've had guys that have debuted or have come in fresh from other territories that wrestle a little differently than the WWF style, and they bring their style with them, at least in the beginning. And you've got Garvin, who's still working kind of the stiff Crockett NWA style, and Perfect, who has been here for a while. I'm not saying he's not new. He's been here, almost a year, and maybe a little less than a year. And he is still kind of in that AWA grappling phase and never really leaves it because he's just that good. So you don't have the boring, dull, long WWF house show match. You've got 2 guys that wrestle 2 different styles from 2 different territories and put on a banger. Perfect likes working a bit snug. Garvin most certainly likes working a bit snug. And they really worked each other pretty good, and the crowd was into it. they were in a good spot here too, because after the fucking dreg that we just had to sit through, the crowd was kind of juiced up for a little action, and this was a perfect spot for this match. If this match is somewhere else in the show, I don't think it would look as good as it did here because of the pile of crap we watched before this.
Maybe for the crowd, but for me, it would have looked good. I mean, I liked it a lot.
But
for the live crowd, it probably helped coming off that drizzler, as Parv would say.
Yeah. Yes, the drizzles. That's kind of what I was reading to her. I think we would have liked it either way, but I definitely think it looked better, maybe cosmetically, that it was in this slot rather than maybe somewhere else. But yeah, I like this match a lot, Todd, and we've talked about it. JR and I have talked about it since we started this run. There's a lot of guys that I hated for a long time, and now that we're really doing a deep dive into them, I'm learning to kind of appreciate them a little bit more. And Garvin might be a guy that I'm actually going to start liking more as I continue to watch him.
Yeah, I don't think it's fair to judge Garvin necessarily on his pay-per-view matches just because he was in weird feuds and nothing quite clicked, although there were some entertaining moments where we got Garvin cutting the promos against Valentine, but this was quite the surprise for me. Contrasting styles between the brawler Garvin and the bump machine Hennig. And I got to say, it was a lot of fun. I could have watched it another 10 minutes or so. That, you had the Minnesota AWA style versus the Georgia WCW NWA. And I had kind of given Garvin a lot of crap for just being a fluke champion against Flair. Yep. He holds his own pretty well here. So he's at least carryable, we can see. Right. And, boy, you forget how good Hennig was. Hennig was really good at the little stuff that you see in the near falls and the bumping and selling. And he lets Garvin get a great shine in here. And doesn't Garvin have the stupidest haircut of all time at this point?
I swear, if he had better hair, I think he's not looked at as goofy. I think the hair always hindered him.
Yeah.
Big time.
But he is a guy that I think has benefited quite a bit over the last decade of being kind of revisited and looked at. I think his NWA stuff really holds up very well, and a lot of this stuff holds up well too. So I think he's a guy that's really gained a lot of positive momentum historically over the last decade as more and more footage is being reviewed and people wanted to revisit more of these eras. It seems like he's a guy that gets championed quite a bit more than you would have expected just watching this stuff 20 years ago.
Yeah, and I forgot to talk about that Leap and Lanny promo poem. Yes. Pretty good, actually.
Yeah, it was.
And I think it is the start of him actually developing a personality besides just the weirdo with the suit of iron and the little things he would do. This is him molding into the genius. And he would soon hook up with Hennig, if I'm not mistaken, right? Mm-hmm. After this. So I also appreciated seeing Vladimir the Superfan stand up and cheer when when Lenny went after Hogan. So I like that. I think it's kind of historically not necessarily important, but significant to check out and enjoy because there's something interesting about the way Lenny Poffo reads a poem. So,
excuse me. Yeah, you could tell too that he had probably been waiting to get to be a little bit more acerbic and show some personality. He had really just been in that same role since early '85 when he arrived, or late '85, whenever it was. Him and Savage came in September. He's pretty much been in this same role, opening end guy, face, smiling, throwing the frisbee. So you could tell maybe he was, looking for a taste of something more. So I think it was a good idea. Even if he stays in the same role, just as a heel, it works. So, all right, backstage is quite the event. And Sean Mooney is with the Rockers. They've been begging for a rematch with the Brainbusters. They'll be ready to wrestle, but they're anticipating a brawl. They're tag team specialists. Marty fucks up. He says lying, cheating, stealing, and just walks off. They come back and repeat everything they said and walk off again. So this was all left intact on this airing.
Utterly ridiculous.
It was real bad. Yeah, I was shocked they left it in. I was like, what the fuck is going on? But it was clear that they fucked up the first take and hit the second and that they didn't clean it up. So any thoughts on that promo from you guys?
Yeah, how did they not? Who doesn't fucking do that homework? Was Vince not in the building? I mean, seriously.
I don't know. Did this air live? If it was a matinee, I'm guessing it probably aired that night. So you would think they would have had time to chop it. I don't think they would have aired it live in the afternoon.
Yeah, that's true. It was probably aired in prime time.
Yeah, so that's even worse. They would have had time to chop it out.
I know. What'd you think, Todd? I was floored. I totally forgot that even happened.
Well, with all the different chemical combinations in front of that screen, there's a lot of things that could have gone wrong. But yeah, it is kind of historically. There I go again. It's sure interesting to see how that was handled. Sean Mooney doesn't really know what to do, right? He just kind of, all right, let's try again, quick. But that's amazing that we get to see that all takes of it, and it's just not even a good promo. How do you even mess that up? You know,
right? Yeah,
you do it in your sleep.
And he probably was doing it.
I was going to say, yeah.
All right, Mooney recovers to talk to the Big Boss Man and Slick. Boss Man's fired up and mad, and we'll take it out on Hulk Hogan tonight. Slick says he never interferes, and the cage shouldn't even matter. Boss Man says he will do Randy Savage a favor and take out Hogan ahead of WrestleMania. And that does bring us to this Rage in the Cage. Hulk Hogan taking on the Big Boss Man, the culmination potentially of their big feud. The crowd is buzzing, good heat, and the Boss Man has really grown into this top role that he's been thrust into over the last 6 months or so. Usual big pop for Hogan. He power walks out, goes right at Boss Man, whips him around the ring, drilling with right hands and a big elbow. Hogan pelts Boss Man with a big boot and big suplex. Boss Man stops Hogan from climbing, but gets caught himself, and the two trade punches on the top turnbuckle. The crowd is rocking as Hogan batters Boss Man until Boss Man headbutts him to the mat. Boss Man gets over the top of the cage, but stops to fuck with the crowd. He takes his time, and that allows Hogan to catch up, pull him back in so he can choke him across the top of the cage. Hogan pulls him over and suplexes Boss Man back inside in a wild spot. Both men are down and out to the point that the ref comes in and starts to count both, and that confounds Al. Hulk sits up at 8, and the ref leaves. Both men are now stirring, and Hogan is the first up. He bites Boss Man and then runs into a spine buster. Boss Man works the throat, gets a chain from Slick. Hogan blocks the chain shot and throws Boss Man into the cage. Comes back and slams into a big pop and nails Boss Man with the chain 3 times, slicing him open. Hogan slings him into the cage 4 times and drops the leg. He starts to climb, but Slick comes in to hook his leg. Hulk kicks him down and blocks Boss Man from escaping, crotches him, cuffs Boss Man to the top rope. But Boss Man has enough energy to try and go out the door. However, the cuffs are hooked to the rope, and he cannot reach all the way to the floor. Slick tries to unlock the cuffs in time, but Hogan heads up and escapes for the win before he can. Hogan grabs a chair, levels Boss Man on the floor with it, and then beats up Slick before celebrating. Red hot match and never slowed down. Great memorable spot with a superplex and then the blood. It felt like an 85, 86 Hogan match. With the pacing and brawling, some of those ones we saw, Scott, if you're like Morocco and those guys, versus some of the more formula stuff we've seen him fall into here in 87, 88, and 89. But Dark Hogan continues as he keeps cheating as a means to an end, as revenge, which he's been prone to do over the last year or so. But a big win to propel him to Mania. Boss Man has been fantastic and created himself into being a made man with this main event run that he's gotten. He took every advantage he had that they gave him this shot, and he made it count. I went 4 stars. I think this is a classic, and it's the forgotten superplex spot because obviously we'll see another one soon. But this is really kind of the first one they bust out on in a major stage, and this thing was just I thought this was fantastic, Todd.
This was a match I've seen a lot because it was on a Coliseum tape called The Best of WWF Steel Cage Matches, and it has my beloved blue video game cage, as I like to call it. Red hot match, great heat throughout, and Boss Man bleeds all over the place, which is awesome. I think that happened at the superplex spot, and this is maybe I'd say on the top, maybe in the top 10 Hogan WWF matches from the original Federation era for me. I really think that you get to see the back and forth, and he lets Boss Man get a little bit more of the best of him instead of just a monster heel beat down Hogan formula match. You see a little bit more back and forth, and Boss Man looks, my goodness, so young here. It's hard for me to comprehend how good he was at this point. You know, I'd seen him as Big Bubba Rogers before, and then they brought him in and did this package of the character, and I really enjoy this main event run he had. And there is another match coming up between the two of them that we'll talk about. Yeah, I'll hear you guys talk about. But yeah, pretty amazing stuff.
And that's an interesting point, Todd, that I had not thought of, was where it ranks in Hogan's WWF matches. 4 obviously has to get there. I mean, I can think of a few off the top of my head that are better. But yeah, I mean, to come up with 10 better than this, probably not. So
yeah, I think
that's a great point.
That's the right rating was in that top 10, because you can think about the big Mania moments, and there were some other ones, but this for me, just because It feels big. It's an MSG with a definitive ending, not a count out or anything like that. And God bless Slick. You forget how good Slick is at doing the Jimmy Hart bump thing. Just an amazing manager for the time. So yeah, I like this so much. And Scott, I gave it 4 stars too.
As did I. We 3 for 3, 4 stars. Your match time 11:14. I don't know if it's because Hogan hasn't had a chance to really work with a great Southern style guy in his run. You think of all the secondary feuds that we've gone through, JR, over the 4.5 years of through the Garden years since we have done this, that a lot of the guys Hogan's faced have been mostly Northern guys or lazy guys like Morocco, even though Morocco was motivated at least during that stretch. By nature, Morocco wasn't as motivated as he had been. But now he's taken on a guy over the last 6 months where it may not be the best shape ever. Obviously, it's Bossman at his plumpest. But regardless, Bossman just knows like the psychology of the Southern style, learning it from being with Cornette and being in his crew and working with Dusty and the backstage guy, and that creative in Crockett, and knowing how to fill the gaps as a heel in matches where maybe you're not as technically sound, not everyone's Ric Flair, and just doing it well. And I think Hogan thrived on being able to have a little extra fun during these house show matches that you can't see at WrestleManias or Saturday Night's Main Events or SummerSlams or whatever pay-per-views. And I think Hogan thrived on that. We keep talking about the fact that earlier in the decade, this guy's winning New Japan, or whatever they were called back then, Super Grand Prix Cups or whatever the hell they were called, whatever the G1 Climax was called in the 80s. And this guy's winning tournaments.
Settle down, Chad. It's going to be okay.
But G1 Grand Prix. The just putting on great matches, and then never really gets to here because Vince wants him to do the ear cupping and the pointing and the working, the posing. So I think he actually thrived on being able.
So I'll just disagree with that one. I don't think Vince wanted him to do that. I think Hogan had to do it because of the schedule and the beating
that's
he
true
took.
too. Yes.
I think he had to get into this formula. If you look at some of the matches, he's talked about it, right? With the shit with Orndorff, just like beating the shit out of his neck and his, his knees and his hips from the leg drop. Like I think he had to settle in to this formula for his own good. I mean, this guy was working a hellacious schedule from '83 on. I think if he kept going with those wild brawls he was doing in '85, '86, like he would have just crashed out. So I think it was actually a shrewd move. I don't think it was Vince saying, "Hey, boss, you got to do this." Like I think it was Hogan probably coming. I mean, Vince helped him come to that point, but I think it was kind of more him coming to his senses to say, "Hey, I can't do this every night across the country. I got to kind of just fall into this simplistic formula."
True. No, I agree with you on that. I think. So I think, I think that also your theory even backs my point up even more, that I think occasionally, Hogan liked to kind of, particularly guys that were working for him and working with him. I think Hogan wanted to reward them by really giving them something fun. And I think him and Bossman were having a blast together. And of course they would end up having a pretty long friendship in the business. And I think this is why, because I think Bossman respected him, and he and Hogan, they gave each other really great matches when you least expected it. Now they wrestled that night. Now talk about this. This match was 11:14. He doesn't have a time for the Boston match. It was probably around the same length.
Was that a cage match too? That doesn't say.
Yes, it was.
And actually, and they probably did Boston, that Superflex spot in both, I'm sure.
Yeah. Now in Boston, I don't know if this is just because it's how Graham lined it up, but that match was last. The rest of the card was identical to what we have, except that he has Hogan. He has this match last.
And that one was definitely televised because when I was looking for like pictures and stuff for this one, it was showing clips from that. So that match is out there. It's we probably have access to it somewhere. So I'm curious how good it is. If it's as good as this, I'm sure they busted out the Superplex. And Todd, to your point earlier too, like I was thinking about Hogan's big matches before this. I mean, Hogan Andre is kind of in its own class, right? Would you say this
great for reasons besides different than what I would say this is great for?
So is this his best? Is this better than any pay-per-view match he's had to date?
I think it depends how up through before WrestleMania 5. You're saying
yes to this point.
To this point,
yeah. I think without question.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think the only thing that probably comes close to it is maybe the Savage matches in 85/86, and I don't
The
know.
MSG ones, right?
Yeah, maybe Morocco. I don't know. I'd have to look back at our grades, Scott. Like, you really got me thinking, Todd. Like, I don't think there's too many before this. This may be.
I really like the main event, Saturday night's main event with Funk.
Right, but I don't think I had that at 4.
Yeah, it's more of a 3. This is really good.
This is higher than any of the Hogan Morocco I had. 3 was the highest there.
Yeah, we had. Let's see. When do they start? May. Let's see.
All right, so
yeah,
I had Hogan
the
Savage. I had Hogan Savage January of '86 at 4 stars. You had it at 4.5, Scott.
Okay.
And then, like I said, if you take 3 out of the picture, this and that Savage match probably rival is his best. Hogan Harley. You had it 4, Scott. I had a 3.5. That was June of '87.
Oh, I remember that match. That match was really good.
Survivor Series '87, we had it 4. I guess it depends how much you want to credit Hogan there. Hogan and Bigelow, DiBiase and Virgil, you went 4. 3.5, 3. Yeah, this is pretty much tied for my highest Hogan match to date. And I'll tell you, I don't think it's that much behind, if at all, from 5, which we could talk about, I guess, when we get there. But different can of worms when you look at what was involved and on the line. But from a pure match perspective, I have them about even. So there's that.
Yeah. No, it's amazing. And again, these are like, these are gems when you're talking about house shows and the local regional stuff that get forgotten. But I don't think there's any doubt. This match is floating somewhere because this was on MSG. And of course, the Boston match was on Nesson. So that's definitely televised somewhere if you could find it. And I'm sure, I don't know how close they were. Well, the Spectrum was actually, believe it or not, the Spectrum was starting to wrap up their televised house shows. I think after '89, they weren't televising them anymore. So it was getting very rare. I don't know if Maple Leaf Gardens was still doing theirs, but I think Hogan was really getting himself amped up to have a strong '89 throughout. And I think working with a guy like Bossman was helping him out. So tremendous match, tremendous psychology. Hogan might be one of my favorite steel cage wrestlers. Like, all of his steel cage matches are always really good. He knows what to do and how to work it based on the opponent. I have a moderate soft spot for him and Bundy at 2. So I think this really benefited Hogan going into Atlantic City, that he was prime and he was ready to go, and he wasn't below his own standards for a match that he knew he had to be on. This wasn't Andre. This wasn't Bundy. This was arguably pound for pound the best worker in the company that he was facing April 2nd. So he couldn't fuck off like he did with Andre, where everything was spot, and kind of, he really had to work it here. So kudos to Hogan for really, for a guy who always goofs about not needing work rate. He kind of showed it off a little bit. And again, for Boss Man, for a feud, he wasn't going to win. He clearly.
No, he doesn't need to win. He doesn't need to win the feud. Like, this a win.
No, he doesn't.
Just being in it for him is a win.
Exactly.
Just being involved at this level.
Putting Hogan over strong. Exactly. Yep.
It's a shame. It's not a shame because I love the Twin Towers, but you wish they would put Boss Man against somebody like Warrior after this feud.
Right.
Because as a reward, gets more profile, gets some cachet. But because, it's just as much Boss Man's fault for this being awesome. He's red hot as a heel and doing things that no other big man could do except for maybe Bigelow at this point. So really, really enjoyed it. I also forgot to talk about how I like Hogan dancing around in Slick's cap.
Yes,
cracks me up afterwards.
He
looks like Jamie from MythBusters.
Yeah, he look like Gazzo's driver on roids.
It's been a good run for Slick too to give us a break from. We've talked about this, Scott, from Bobby and Jimmy in the main events. Yep. Slick's kind of been up here now for a bit, so it's been a nice change, and we'll get an even different one after Mania. But that was a nice change of pace too to give Slick something big.
Yep. I agree.
All right.
All right. Why don't we take a break? We're about halfway through. I gotta say, JR, minus it's amazing because almost all of our matches have been really, really good tonight, and then we just had that one epic failure.
But it's fine. So, you expect that, on these house shows. The fact that we're getting so much other good stuff, it makes it even easier. Because normally we get a shit like that and then not much else. to really get us by. So I'll take it. I'll take it.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, why don't we take a
so
break?
far?
We'll come back. We'll hit the second half of the show
Yes.
and do our awards.
Do the awards because
Number 2, a movie queen to play the scene of bringing all the good things out in me. But for now, love, let's be real. I never thought I could act this way, and I've got to say that I just don't get it. I don't know where we went wrong, but the feeling's gone, and I just can't get it back.
Promotional consideration paid for by the following.
Place to Be Nations, JT Rosero and Chad Campbell here. We want to let you know that we have over 24 podcasts available on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and PlaceToBeNation.com. We now offer them to you on 2 great feeds. On the Place to Be Nation Wrestling feed, we dive into topics running the gamut from today's WWE to the glory days of yesteryear and the ins and outs of the territory days. In addition to our full-length shows, we also deliver to you special pod blasts on topics old and new.
The Place to Be Nation Pop feed is a veritable treasure trove of great content. Offered tremendous shows covering the land of movies, television, life, comics, and sports, brought to you by the most knowledgeable and insightful folks in the podcast world.
You can find all of these current shows, plus archives of our previous podcasts over the past 8 years as well by subscribing to our feeds on iTunes. And while there, be sure to rate and leave feedback as well. All of these shows, plus others available at PlaceToBeNation.com, where we cover pro wrestling, sports, movies, comics, plus in-depth stretch projects and more. Be sure to support our site by using www.placetobenation.com/Amazon while doing your online shopping. And be sure to join us at our forum at bigelow34.proboards.com for all sorts of wrestling, sports, and pop culture discussion each and every day where you can make your voice heard. We also want to thank our friends at Bonehead's Wing Bar, ProWrestlingOnly.com, and TheHistoryOfWrestling.com. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Tumblr as well. PlaceToBeNation.com, the only place to be in your pop culture world.
Hey, this is Scott Keith, the former net cop. You're listening to the Place to Be Podcast.
All right, Nation, we are back taking a look at the March 1989 Mystery House Show. And Scott, I think what I hadn't mentioned, excuse me, what I hadn't mentioned is one of the highlights, of course, was my time spent with Mark Claire. Got to brush his hair, got to video him sing, and it was just once a year I get to have that beautiful man dropped into my lap for a few days, and it just makes my year, really. It powers me through for another 12 months, and I get lost in his hair, I get lost in his eyes, just like Debbie Gibson sang the number one song in the nation. Tonight's Lost in Your Eyes. You hear that playing under us. But before we get to the Pop Culture Corner, we're going to take a moment just to tell you what's going on in the world of Place to Be Nation. And to kick us off with that, we have the manager of the Pop Feed here, so why not let him do the deed and tell us what's going on the Pop Feed.
Over on the Place to Be Nation we had a busy week on the Pop Feed. We had a little bit of something for everyone. I personally oversaw many of these shows. Steve and Kelly were joined by Jason Sherman on Songs for the Friends. They talked about Zebrahead and Bush on the same show on an episode I entitled Zebra Bush. This month on Hard Traveling Fanboys, which is the longest running weekly episodic comic book podcast in all of Place to Be Nation, they are featuring Shazam. It's Shazam month. So they did a review of the Longbook Hunter, a Longbook Hunter's style review, and they're going to fire me after this promo, on the Monster Society of Evil. They also have a Shazam movie review that they put up a couple weeks ago. Also, Andrew and Adam working on the NBA and NCAA team podcasts. They've got East and West previews up for the NBA playoffs. We have lots going on with Marvel Age and Marvel Age Masterclass 1970 is in the books, and we were talking about that. There's also Talkin' Pop. They talked to Glenn Butler, and they have an upcoming episode featuring JT Rizzero on
No, they broke
WrestleMania.
kayfabe on that one. They went.
Okay.
I didn't care for it. Apparently, they decided on their own because they just started going with it. But yeah, it was a fun show though. It was really good. Everyone should listen.
I'm looking forward to it. Last year's WrestleMania recap was one for the all-time books, and there was also the Sassies featuring Jennifer Smith and Miranda Berthold talking about the year in pop culture 2018. I saw that you, JT, voted because they mentioned that somebody actually voted for Wendy McClellan-Covey, or Wendy. Did I say it right?
From the mom from the Goldbergs?
Yes.
I did vote, but I don't think I voted for her.
I think you would be the only one who would have voted for her, unless it was me.
Let me check.
I kind of have a thing for her. So,
what category?
Best TV actress.
Best TV actress. No, that was not me. No, it was not me.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you voted anyway.
I voted for Ellie Camper from Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt.
Yeah, they alive, damn it. Them females. All right, so lots is going on here on the Place to Be Nation pop feed. Looking forward, looking back. It's having their summer movie wager. You have about one more week to get those picks into LFLB Pop. Just rate what your top 10 predictions for the movie box office will be, and you can guest star on an episode of Laugh-In Theater, much like Scott, myself, Tim Capel, Russell Sellers, Glenn Butler all already have. Mm-hmm. Hey, Justin, what's going on with the wrestling feed today?
Hey, Todd, let me tell you, we had a lot of WrestleMania recapping going on. Not only was the Chris and Devin reaction show live, not only did Scott Criscolo and crew recap the entire weekend of main event, Nate Milton and his boys were back on a special edition of Chain Reaction, breaking down WrestleMania as well. So be sure to listen to all those to get your fill of what went down at WrestleMania weekend. Myself and Chad returned last week with a brand new Wrestling Warzone. We finished off 1995 with a discussion about Starrcade, talking some New Japan versus WCW, which I thought was kind of a cool tie-in considering we had just seen New Japan come to visit ROH. So I thought that was kind of neat. Parallel, if you will. Speaking of Chad, him and Parv, we continue to dip into the vault for where the big boys play. We looked at Starrcade 87, the first half of that show. And Nick, Duke, and Greg Phillips delivered a brand new What If as they examine a world where CM Punk does not leave WWE in 2014. Check out all that, plus more at PlayStation.com. We're getting things up and running. Projects and reviews to come. We just completed a really cool project that should drop sometime over the next week or so. The written version of that will be up soon. And the Candy Tournament is into the Elite 8. So the regional finals of the 4 brackets all dropped today. If you search PTB Greatest Candy Tournament on Facebook, or if you follow our Twitter feed, the polls go up there. This will culminate on Easter as we determine the greatest candy. And I'm told there's some shenanigans afoot. I'm told Kit Kat is giving Snickers a run for its money, apparently. That's the hot news.
Interesting.
Hot news in the chats.
Well, with the growth of peanut allergies, one would think that not everybody can consume Snickers the way they used to.
I guess so. Everyone's got to toughen up out there. Eat your peanuts. Eat your nuts. I can give you an up-to-date. So Kit Kat is winning on the Facebook poll 54% to 46%. However, that is the inverse on Twitter, where Snickers is up 54-46. Less votes, though, so far, because I put it up later. So we will tally those up, and we will see which will move on to the Final Four. So keep an eye on
What happens in the case of a tie?
I think we've been doing a tiebreaker within like the group that put it together, but we've only had one so far, and I hadn't tweeted it, so I think I then put it on Twitter. So anyway, that's that. So we'll see, and will be more tournaments to come. I think we've kind of found a way to do it with the social media path rather than through the site directly. So we're gonna hopefully have a couple more things in the works.
We definitely talked about breakfast cereals this weekend, so
True.
I think that's going to happen.
That is, and there's also rumors that the certain tournament from last year that didn't get to finish because of European bots getting involved may reignite. So we'll see. We shall see. All right, so with all that said, Todd and I are going to take a break, and we're going to turn things over to Scott Criscuolo because it is time for the Pop Culture Corner.
Yes, there's a great picture backtracking of a lot of people being amazed at the greatness of Mark Claire's hair. We all got lost in his hair. Anyway, yes, Debbie Gibson's "Lost in Your Eyes" was the number one song.
We're down to Stacy trying to emulate Mark's hair. Like, I swear she saw him last year.
I know, yeah.
And it's like, when I come back next year, I'm going to have that same hair. And she did it.
Yeah, little Claire.
Oh, God, that's hilarious. That's true. So Debbie Gibson at number one with "Lost in Your Eyes." "The Living Years" by Mike and the Mechanics at number two. "Roni" by Bobby Brown. That's a forgotten one with him. That's number three. The Infamous, the song that started the controversy, "Girl, You Know It's True" by Milli Vanilli at number four, moving up the charts. Of course, that was the song that was on the infamous tape that skipped in this state, by the way. In this state of Connecticut, it happened. At number five, "Paradise City" by Guns N' Roses from the unbelievably awesome Appetite for Destruction album. Number six, "Eternal Flame" by the Bangles, which is funny because I said Debbie Peterson instead of Desiree, and of course Debbie Peterson was, I think, the drummer of the Bangles. Number seven, "My Heart Can't Tell You No" by Rod Stewart. Number eight, "The Look" by Roxette. Number nine, one of JR's wife's favorite bands, "The Right Stuff" by New Kids on the Block. And number 10, "Don't Tell Me Lies" by Breathe. So there's a top 10 that came out.
We're really hitting, like, in 89. You know, you always kind of picture, like, the last year of the decade almost bleeds a little bit into the next decade. Like, a lot of the songs you're mentioning now, profile is that you kind of think of 90s songs, I think, because they almost feel like 90s artists, like the New Kids.
Right.
Roxette, you know, like some of those like feel 90s-ish. And we'll see it again, 99, you get the same shit where they feel like 2000 songs. But it's funny, like we're really just on the verge, you know, of the 90s. And we're seeing it bleed through, with some of the wrestlers that are involved now in the company, and also with a lot of the songs you mentioned. So,
yeah, no, it's, and obviously this is just a taste of, like, even Bobby Brown as well.
Right.
So the new countdown came out on this date, on this Saturday, March 18th, 1989, and Debbie Gibson's "Lost in Your Eyes" was number one. All right, JR, the night before, of course, was a Friday, so of course 3 new movies came out. And here we go. At number 3, a drama titled "Slaves of New York."
Oh, okay.
Slaves of New York. Interesting, right?
Yeah.
What is
the story follows Eleanor, an aspiring hat designer and group of artists and models in downtown New York City art world. Eleanor lives with her younger boyfriend Stash, an unknown artist who is unfaithful and treats Eleanor with careless indifference. She expresses her feelings for Stash when she tells him she was once attracted to him because he was dangerous. Another Roxette song starring Bernadette Peters, Chris Sarandon, Mary Beth Hunt, Madeline Potter, Charles McCann, Joe Leeway, Anna Katrina, Steve Buscemi as Wilfredo.
Very early Steve Buscemi.
Mm-hmm.
At number 2, kind of a well-known but forgotten, kind of well-known yet forgotten horror movie at the same time. Made $15.3 million. It is called Leviathan.
Oh, starring Dave Bautista.
Not the you know. No, this creature did not have white pupils.
Belly button ring.
Miss Martin, the CEO of Tri-Oceanic Corporation, hires geologist Stephen Beck to supervise an undersea mining operation for 6 months. The crew consisted of members Dr. Glenn Doc Thompson, Elizabeth Willie Williams, Buzz Sixpack Parrish, Justin Jones, Tony DeJesus Rodero, Bridget Bowman, and G.P. Cobb. While working outside the deep sea station, a pressure suit Sixpack discovers a Soviet shipwreck, Leviathan. The crew salvage a safe from Leviathan, finding records detailing the death of several crew members and a video log from the captain. Also finds a flask of vodka. And there's a lot more bullshit. Starring Peter Weller, Richard Crenna, Amanda Pays, Daniel Stern, Ernie Hudson, Meg Foster, Hector Elizondo.
All right. And the number 1 movie that came out that weekend, Hector, a comedy and a sequel from a actually very funny movie from a few years earlier. It is titled Fletch Lives. I never thought they were going to do a sequel for that. But the first Fletch, Chevy Chase, was very good.
Mm-hmm.
JR will describe to you if the sequel was any good.
Fletch, a reporter in Los Angeles of the Los Angeles Times, is contacted by the executor of his late aunt's will, attorney Amanda Ray Ross. Ross informs Fletch he's inherited his aunt's 80-acre plantation, Belle Isle, in Thibodaux, Louisiana. Upon arriving, Fletch is disappointed to find the mansion terribly dilapidated, but he agrees to keep it on as his caretaker, calculus entropy. Fletch has dinner with Ross at her home, and she tells him of an anonymous $225,000 bid to buy Belle Isle, starring, of course, Chevy Chase, Hal Holbrook, Julianne Phillips, my boy Arlie Ermey, Randall Tex Cobb, Patricia Callenber, Richard Belzer, recovered from his big head injury, and Phil Hartman is on there as well. So,
yes, indeed. So there you go. Those were your three big movies. And as a matter of fact, Fletch Lives in Leviathan made the most money that week at the box office. Fletch Lives made $11.4 million. Leviathan made $6.8 million. Number 3, The Rescuers, which I think that was a re-release because the first Rescuers, Walt Disney animated movie, I think that came out in like the early 80s, so I think that's a re-release.
Yeah, Rescuers like 78, and this Rescuers Down Under came out like not long after this, so I believe that this is like getting people fired up for
that's what I'm that's what I was assuming too, Todd. Number 4,
77
Lean on
came
Me.
out.
Yeah, so Lean on Me, number 4, Rain Man, which is kicking ass. 5th, Skin Deep. 6th, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. 7th, and chances are 8th. Speaking of, why don't we do a quick detour here? Because we coming out around that time was the Oscars in 1989, and let's take a quick look and see.
Hang on, I have a couple of notes here on The Rescuers.
Oh, sure.
Just to call out. So it's a controversy. January 8th, 1999, 3 days after the film's second release on home video, it was recalled 3.4 million copies. Do you guys know why?
Boobies.
Nudity.
Correct. It's an image of a blurry woman topless with breasts and nipple showing in non-consecutive frames twice during a scene which Miss Bianca and Bernard are flying Orville's back to New York City. So there you go.
Yeah, there's a scene. What it is they're in like their whatever their car, plane, or whatever, and they're going through buildings, and one of the buildings was an open window, and the woman had her tatas flopping out. So.
And also, so it was actually re-released in 1983 for the first time, grossed $21 million, and then re-released in '89 for another $21 million, giving it an all-time $71 million, and worldwide $169. So 3 times it was released in theaters.
And in November, you'll be able to see it on Disney Plus.
There you go.
Yes.
Listen to Benj, please, for more on that.
Yes.
Thank you.
April 12th, November 12th. All right. So the Oscars came out. The Oscars aired about a week and a half later, the 29th. So might as well just get out of the way now. And the movie that we've talked about often, JR, in the big money category, did very well. Rain Man, as we mentioned, won Best Picture. Barry Levinson won Best Director for Rain Man. Dustin Hoffman won Best Actor for Rain Man. Best Screenplay, also for Rain Man. The other nominees for Best Picture were Accidental Tourist, Dangerous Liaisons, Mississippi Burning, and Working Girl. So there you go. Jodie Foster won Best Actress for The Accused. Kevin Kline won Best Supporting Actor for A Fish Called Wanda, which is actually one of the funnier movies. And Geena Davis won Best Supporting Actress for The Accidental Tourist. So,
I'm just going to say The Accused is not a great date night movie.
Absolutely not. No, it's not. You are quite correct, Mr. Weber. All right, quick check of the NBA on this evening. Of course, baseball has not started yet. There were 8 games on tap, no locals in action. However, Adrian Dantley had 30 points for the Mavs, but they lost. A win for the Sacramento Kings on this evening, 100-90 at Old Arco.
Who was their top scorer? Do you know?
Top scorer for Sacramento, I'll click it in a moment. Clyde Drexler was the high scorer of the night, 35 for Portland, but Houston beat them 127-113. Let me take a look at the box score real quick. The Kings, a robust 19-46 after this win.
Great year.
Let's see. The high score was Kenny Smith with 23. Wayman Tisdale and Danny Ainge, who I must have been traded midseason unless he started the year there, 15 apiece. Harold Presley, I think he went to Villanova.
Yes.
17, and Jim Peterson had 14. Your boy Ricky Berry had 5 off the bench. So there you go.
Ainge and the Baby Blues is quite the sight.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
You know, Harold Presley, who played for Villanova, still lives in my neck of the woods, and I saw him at the liquor store not too long ago. Believe it or not, true story. I said, "What's up, Harold?" He said, "Hey, what's happening?" You know, he's picking up something. He's worked as a player personnel guy for the Kings organization for a long time, so he's still affiliated. Started his family in town here, but he lives maybe 2 miles away from my house, which is an amazing thing. He looks like Bill Cosby, if you've ever seen him, young Bill Cosby with the thick eyebrows.
Hope he doesn't act like him.
Yeah, thank God.
Let's hope. Maybe that's why he was at the liquor store.
You know, that Villanova team. No surprise. So there you go. So the standings: the Knicks were leading the Atlantic 42-21. Cleveland leading the Central 46-17. The Midwest, the Jazz were 41-24, and the Lakers leading the Pacific at 45-18. So we're getting close to the end of the regular season there. In the NHL on this evening, now Todd, the Sharks Ducks years, who was your hockey team as a kid? The Kings?
I really wasn't much of a hockey guy back then, but if I had to choose someone, it was the Red Wings.
Okay. They lost on this evening 3-2 to the Blues. Bruins won. They beat the Flyers 6-3. And JR, our Whalers, got throttled 8-2 by the Caps. But the Red Wings were leading the Norris with 76 points. The Flames were having an incredible year, 105 points to this point. The Canadians were having an even better year, 107 points. And won the Adams, and the Caps were leading the Patrick with 84 points as we were getting close to, as a matter of fact, by the time we get to WrestleMania 5, we'll be in the NHL playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
And that is it for your Pop Culture Corner. Back to Madison Square Garden.
Sean Muniz with the Bushwhackers calls Rougeau's crybabies, so they bring in Jim Duggan to prep for their big 6-man tonight. Duggan says this team is a match made in heaven and shits on Bravo and the Ragu sisters, as he calls them. Mooney's in with the Red Rooster, who clucks over. Mooney says Heenan is barred for ringside tonight. Rooster talks about how he isn't limited, says the early bird gets the weasel. The Brooklyn Brawler has no ability, and you can't make chicken salad into chicken. But he has to get through Brawler tonight to get Bobby at Mania. Rooster, I think, looks like a fucking idiot. All right, back to the ring is the Rockers, fresh off that hot promo, take on the Brainbusters. A really big rematch as the card moves along. Crowd is pumped for the Rockers. Tony breaks down the style differences as Arn and Sean start things off. Sean dominates the action, slugging away, eventually fending off Tully before things break down into a brawl. We restart with Sean and Tully, with Sean grabbing hold of the arm and tagging Marty. The Rougeaus take turns working the arm, keeping Tully grounded and away from the corner. Marty eventually ends up on the floor, but Arn gets rammed into the post, and now the Rougeaus work the arm. All four end up in the ring, and the Rougeaus get a double head scissors takeover. Double drop kicks to clean house. The tide finally turns when Arn is able to snap Sean's neck across the top rope while standing on the apron. The Busters gather their bearings and get to work in and out of the ring. Sean gets a good hope spot on the floor, but Tully cuts him off and makes the tag. Arn gets some real sharp strikes in, and the Busters keep battering the neck. Sean finds a window and slams Tully off the top and then falls into the tag. Marty cleans house and gets a near fall. Sean comes back in but gets thrown right back out. Marty stays hot. Sean wipes out Arn on the floor. Sean goes up and leaps off Marty's shoulders, but Arn yanks the ref out during the count, and the Rockers win by DQ. Another really fun match with these teams, but this one just was missing that next gear. I feel like it never really kicked in. It was just a real good tag clinic. Fine with the finish here, as the Busters should be kept strong. The Rockers can't keep taking losses. So it made sense. It was a good match. Two good teams that provide depth. Great teams, really. But again, this one just it reminded me of Perfect and Garvin from earlier, where it needed like that extra 5 minutes of next gear to really take us to that hidden gem territory. As is, this is a really, really good house show match. I went 3 stars, Scott.
I went 3.5. I liked it a lot. I like any match that these two were in. Your match time, 13:53. Nice and meaty for them. This one I thought was almost a little better than the one they had in February. The length, by the way, I think the one they had that night in Boston was even longer. That one was, they gave them 22:25 that night.
I think in January, right? They fought in January.
It was January. I'm sorry, January.
And you actually know that you liked that one better, so you went 4 stars on that. And I went 3.
Really?
I went 3.5. So,
oh, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, they are very close. This one had a little more organized. I feel like this one was paced a little slower, which is why I feel like you seem to think that it didn't hit that gear yet, because I feel like the one in January was just out in going. This one, they told they let the story go a little bit and gave it some time, and I think maybe that took away from the usual pacing. But as I just said, they were given 9 more minutes that night in Boston, so God only knows how good that match was. As a matter of fact, there is a Boston Garden show on, I think it's Allied Powers, the tag DVD that came out earlier in the decade. That's like gangbusters. That might be it. But yeah, these two teams just know each other so well. 2 different teams. You got the high flying, as we saw in the promo, really high flying Rockers, and then obviously Tully and Arn just know how to control the chaos and just grind it down to its most basic denominator, and again a great match. The finish is fine. Rockers couldn't keep eating pins, and right now obviously the Busters were getting set up for later in the year, so the ending was fine with me. But Todd, really another great example of 2 different kinds of teams, high flying and pacemaking, that worked really well. A notch below January, but still really well.
Yeah, I liked when these 2 teams would get together, and would have been nice for them to have a showcase the next month at WrestleMania, just because these 2 teams seem to mesh pretty well, and I'm sure the Boston match is even better than this one was. It was probably nice for Tony to get to call some of his old friends, in Arn and Tully, and I do love those swanky jackets that the Brainbusters show up in. I like those quite a bit. It's a lot of fun to see the contrast in styles, because there's a little bit more mobility, obviously, with the Rockers and a young Shawn Michaels jumping and bumping. But the more ground and pound style of Arn and Tully and the dirty tricks, and it is another quality match. I've always kind of wondered, with Shawn jumping off of Marty's shoulders like that, how is that any more devastating a move than just a top rope splash?
Right.
It's more like salt in the wounds. You know what I mean? It's a slap in the face.
I don't know. I've always wondered about that one. Why does that hurt worse?
Right.
As a finishing.
You think it would actually hurt less because it's harder to jump off someone's shoulders. You might not get the full.
Yeah, you can get up higher with the spring off the ropes. I don't know. It's a thing. But again, the tag division at this time was loaded with the Demolitions and the Brainbusters and the Hart Foundation, Rougeau brothers. Certainly, there's a lot going on tag wise. So it's nice that you got to have a match of this caliber twice in the same day. I'm going to guess that the second match, the Boston match, was longer because they made Hogan Bossman a true end of the show main event.
Right.
And this was kind of like a mid-main. Also, maybe this match didn't heat up as much because it had to follow intermission.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Right. Solid.
All right.
Thank you.
The match should have probably been during intermission when no one was in the ring or in the crowd. Was the Red Rooster taking on the Brooklyn Brawler. Another return match, much less intrigue and excitement than the last one. Bobby Heenan is barred from ringside. Brawler gets some healthy boos. Rooster looks like a fucking moron as he clucks out, but he does get some cheers. Brawler attacks before the bell, but Rooster fends him off. Brawler catches him with a hard stomp as he slides in, but Rooster recovers and gets to work. Tony puts Rooster's Mania match with Bobby over, as Al says Tony knows all about chickens and barnyards as he tries to figure out what to call Rooster's red hair. Brawler clubs back in, but it's short-lived. Rooster comes back and clears him out. He stays on top, keeping Brawler off kilter. Tony is plugging the closed circuit locations around the country for WrestleMania. Brawler posts Rooster outside and works the midsection. Al says Mania will air in 32 countries as Brawler cranks a chin lock. We actually get a loud Rooster chant. Rooster feeds off it, but he can't break free. We get a nice spot as Brawler shoots Rooster hard to the corner. Brawler keeps choking away. Rooster gets a flash near fall, which Al calls a touch of class, a touch of finesse. Brawler keeps bringing the heavy artillery and working the neck. We return to random WrestleMania talk as Brawler keeps going through his offense. Rooster comes back with a bulldog, pecks his way into a comeback, nabbing near falls and grabbing the win with a backslide. Not awful, actually, and proficient at best. Brawler was fine, and Rooster was actually pretty good here. But he still looks stupid, and the feud is still a clown show. and he's going nowhere. I mean, the feud, we've talked about it, we've beaten it to death, but it's predicated on Rooster not sucking is pretty much the whole thing, even though he hasn't really shown any reason to believe he doesn't. So I went 2 stars in this, Todd, and I'm ready for this fiasco to be done.
12 minutes.
Ugh. And it's actually not as bad as you would think. Like if on paper you saw this at 12 minutes.
There was so much stalling, running around the outside of the ring. Yeah. Brawler being brawler. He has like 2 moves. His whole repertoire is I'm going to give it 1.5 stars, but because Terry Taylor is kind of like bargain basement Ric Flair. He really is. He's like Kmart Ric Flair. I've never quite gotten it. That Rooster gimmick is so bad. And the head bobbing thing is just ridiculous. But 12 minutes for this match is way too long. I'd rather 5 of those minutes go to the previous match or to Perfect and Garvin, because this, again, things that they could have trimmed and gotten over the same point. And how many backslide finishes or random roll-ups are we going to get tonight?
Many.
Right. That and countouts are like the theme of this era. Like,
yeah,
we've seen it a lot in house shows, but it definitely is prolific.
It just feels like every match, you guys have finishers. Let's have some kind of thing, but there's not as many definitive endings on these house shows as you'd like.
No.
Right.
And a lot of them were just to keep, brewing till the next one, pretty much. But
I also gave this 2 stars. As you guys mentioned, your match time 11:50. I think the problem we had here was Bobby Heenan is pretty much the most entertaining part of this thing, and then you take him out of the equation, and you're just left with fucking 12 minutes of fucking paint drying. Really, no one gave a shit about either of these fucking guys. A crowd, yes, a crowded Rooster chants only probably. I don't know if it was a heckling or what, but I mean, this is just. I don't know what the fuck happened to Terry Taylor. Do you really just give up on your whole career just because you're having to wear like a dyed fucking...
No, I think the problem is he's actually too into it. I think it's the opposite. I don't think he's mailing it in. It looks stupid that he's like clucking around and pecking around and talking like a fucking bird. Like I don't. The whole thing is dumb. Like it's.
No, I mean the ring part. Yes.
No, I think he's even fine in ring. I think he's trying. I don't think he's mailing it in. I think he's trying. I just think he's limited. I just don't think he's very good. But I do think he's trying. At least at this point, maybe later. But right now, to me, he looks like he's actually trying to get this thing over.
The fact he's standing there mooning, he's actually juking his neck. It's just like, what the fuck is this? But I think the whole point is, and Brawler, like, does anybody really care? I mean, taking Bobby out of the equation for this just makes it just dreadfully dull. Mm-hmm. I don't know why we needed yet another one of these after having an uninspiring one with Bobby in February. Why we need another one here, I don't get. I understand that we're trying to promote this and pump up the Bobby Brewster match at WrestleMania, but I can't imagine why we needed yet another. I would have done like a tag. Maybe have Bobby and Brawler against Rooster and somebody.
They weren't going to have Bobby work before Mania. I mean,
that was my point. What I was finishing was no, I know. But what I was saying is that Bobby does like he does a couple years later at Survivor Series, where he kind of like ducks he doesn't do anything every time Rooster tries something or whatever. He tags Brawler in or something of that nature. Because I mean, without Bobby, nobody really gives a shit about either of these guys. So you got to have Bobby in somehow. But no, I wasn't saying wrestle. Absolutely not. I meant like, he puts his little onesie on, his little Andre-ish singlet and duck, getting into the ring and that kind of thing. I don't know, something, because without Bobby, this is just utterly ridiculous. But
well, Bobby was probably with Rick Rude at that show, I'm going to guess.
Yeah, he's clearly elsewhere. And also, you didn't really need to sell this card with that match. So, I mean, I think it's just Phil here. I think you're putting too much on what it meant. Like, the card is sold on Hogan Boss Man, and that's it. And it actually has a lot of other stuff. So, I mean, this is just Phil. Like, I don't think it's meant to... Like, I didn't need fucking Bobby for this. It wouldn't have mattered. It is what it is.
Probably. Yeah, probably.
All right. Next match, we have Hercules taking on Bad News Brown, which is actually an interesting match. Kind of fresh one, between the two power brawlers. Herc comes out in his new baby blue trunks. He's got his tight haircut. He's got his music. So he's really pretty much into the full face Hercules we would come to know during the next couple of years. Bad News threatens to walk if Herc doesn't put the chain aside. Bad News tries to ambush Herc and levels him, but unloads the fists. Things quickly spill to the floor where Herc gets shoved to the post. Bad News pulls Herc back up and works through his usual strikes. Hercules comes back with a bear hug, and Bad News gets free and ends up back outside, where he smacks Herc around some more. Herc gets on the apron and gets a bear hug while Bad News is in the ring, and that was kind of cool. That gets broken quickly, and Brown is back on offense. Herc finds a seam and goes to the full Nelson, but Bad News runs him into the buckle, breaks it up. Al says Bad News got a vicious swipe to the nape of the neck. Bad News is just battering Herc with hard kicks and punches. He claws away at his face. Herc keeps hanging in, eventually fires back again, dropping Bad News with a hard right, stomping him to the floor. Real war here, a lot of heavy strikes. Bad News eats knees on a splash. We get more slugging. Both men head back out again, and we brawl there until we get the very predictable double count out. Herc runs Bad News off for the chain. Really a weird match. It was literally all strikes. That was all it was, but they were executed really well and forceful, and it kept it entertaining. It felt like a big heavyweight slugfest, and I thought it was fine to kill time. Like, it was better than it looked. Both guys really could use something of substance after their big feuds over the winter tapered off. But I actually enjoyed this much more than I anticipated. It was a fun little brawl where they just really beat the piss out of each other. So I went 2 stars on this, Scott.
I went 2 stars on it as well. Your time, 14:48. Wow. That was a long time for these two. 15 minutes. But yeah, again, strikes was pretty much all you were going to get. I felt like I thought I heard a few cheers when Bad News was announced from Harlem, New York. I think there was a few faint babyface cheers. Faint, but there were some. I'm wondering, curious both your guys' thoughts, if even by this point, Herc's face run is already starting to kind of dull. I know he has a match coming up at in April 2nd. Maybe that gives him a little bit of a boost, but I feel like the babyface run petered out because he really didn't cleanly win the DiBiase feud. And now he seems to be like he didn't win this match, which he probably wouldn't have anyway because they like keeping Bad News pretty strong. But I think even now going into WrestleMania, it seems like Herc is treading water. And you and I we had a lot of nice things to say about Hercules, JR, during a good stretch, even the tail end of the heel run before the babyface turn. But I feel like not definitively taking out DiBiase took a lot of starch out of him, and I feel like it's evident here. But having said that, decent enough power brawl, Todd. But Bad News is still relatively over as a heel, but I feel like already, and it's only been maybe 6 months. It feels like Herc is treading water.
It feels to me the Herc's physical tools have diminished greatly since his peak run as a member of the Heenan family,
right?
And he doesn't have great promo skills. He's a little shorter than you'd like if you're going to be pushing him as a champion level wrestler. I think it's just hard for fans to get behind him at this point with the weird kind of baby blue look and no compelling feud. And he didn't come out of the DiBiase feud looking all that great. DiBiase always kind of outsmarted him, even though Herc had his big, wait a minute, you can't sell me moment. That they did a lot better with Virgil in the future. Had a lot more heat with that kind of an angle, with that rebelling against that. And I guess Boss Man too, if we think about it. So I always wanted Hercules to kind of fulfill that potential. And I loved his match with Hogan back in the day on Main Event. Another one of those brawling matches we were talking about, 85, 86. Actually, was that 88? What year was that?
It was early 87.
Early 87, okay. Yeah.
Pre 3. So, yeah, I'm going to... And you don't even have him tease anything but the bear hug. The full Nelson's not even an issue anymore. Bad News isn't going to play with that. And I should talk about Bad News, too. Bad News kind of did what he did. It's all about waiting to get to the Ghetto Blaster. Stu Hart trained, but you wouldn't really know it. He's such a different, unconventional guy. But, yeah, I wanted this match to be a little bit better, but it was fine for what it was. I wish it was maybe a couple minutes shorter. I gave it 1.5 stars, but it wasn't awful.
All right, that brings us to the final match of the night, as we have a 6-man tag action. The Fabulous Rougeau brothers and Dino Bravo taking on the Bushwhackers and Jim Duggan. Quite the mix of talent here. Good heat in the Canadian squad, who's formed a nice little quasi-stable in 89. We started at the Rumble, continues here. Bushwhackers have the kooky music and get a very warm welcome. Duggan gets a big pop as always. The Canadians bail to talk things through as Duggan and the Bushwhackers stomp around and play to the crowd. Lots of nonsense and stalling before Butch and Ray kick us off. The hijinks continue as Luke breaks up a pin, biting Ray's ass. The ring clears and we get a reset as the crowd is just rabid with USA chants. Things break down again. We get a super battering ram of all three men before the ring is wiped clean once more. We reboot with Duggan and Bravo, and Hacksaw wins that battle easily, sending Dino scurrying to the corner. Things switch up to Luke and Jacques as Luke keeps him off all kilter with some trickery and allows Ray to deck Luke from behind to turn the tide. Bravo gets to work right away. We get some focus on the arm by the Canadians. The trio takes turn pounding away. Bravo spits at Duggan, who yells, "You son of a bitch," and takes the bait. That leads to some triple teaming. Luke keeps taking a pounding as the Canadians work well together, seemingly seamlessly, I should say, tagging and beating on the midsection. Duggan tries to rally the fans, but Jacques twists Luke into a Boston Crab. Luke impressively crosses his corner while in the hold and makes the tag, but the ref misses it and disallows. Jacques comes careening into Bravo by accident, allowing Luke to tag Duggan, who mops up everyone, hitting Jacques with a 3-point stance for 2 as Dino makes the save. Butch comes in and gets an assist from Luke, and the Rougeaus win that battle. Luke is able to trip up Ray, allowing Duggan to smash Jacques in the back with the 2x4, and Butch covers for the win. Really fun, chaotic brawl, wild pace, and well-worked insanity. Duggan cheats to win, but nobody cares. Fine way to close the show and weave together some feuds. And really just pro-level madness that kept the crowd engaged and fired up. Just 6 guys that know how to work this kind of match. I went 2.5 stars, and we'll talk about this in our next episode, over our next 2 episodes. But I really thought they could have just replicated this in Mania and cut some time off of that card and mixed up a couple matches. But we'll save that for then. But I think this was a pretty good template for what could have been, and I like the blending of these 2 feuds. What'd you think, Todd?
Okay. Sorry. I was waiting for that verbal cue that I missed apparently the first time. Well, this was an interesting mashup of teams. You look at the match and you say, oh, well, there's 2 good workers in there. But all 6 are good at what they do. This may be one of the Dino Bravo matches that I watched that it doesn't piss me off like most Dino Bravo matches. It's a lot of fun because he's bumping and selling for Duggan here and there. He's getting to dominate with his power. I usually hate the Bushwhackers, but I kind of like them here with the stupid Hacksaw team. They keep the energy going throughout, which is kind of fun. So, I look at this match on paper and go, well, I wouldn't want to watch that ever. But this was not the worst way to send your crowd home. And, I'm not the biggest fan of the bike short era Rougeau family, and Frenchie Martin sucks, as he's always sucked, and rest in peace, Frenchie, but you were terrible at this point in time. But it was a fine match, and I'll give it 2 stars just because it was just right, about 15 minutes or so. What was the length on this match?
He said, according to Graham, around the 15-minute mark. He wasn't specific. He wasn't specific with that one.
And it felt like they were kind of standing around waiting for the ending or setting up the ending. You could tell it was coming, and people were holding off on their run-ins, that kind of thing. But, that's only the thing that you look for when you know how you've seen a bunch of matches and you can tell that it's coming. So the crowd was really into it too. And, this was one of the better house show cards, I think, overall that I've seen in a long time. I don't get to watch a lot of these MSG shows, but there were half really good stuff and half stinkers and a couple of things in the middle. I think this is on the plus side for me, this particular match and this particular card.
I can't believe I'm about to do this because I never thought I'd give a match with this guy in it this grade, but I actually gave this 3 stars. I was thoroughly, and I mean, Dino Bravo did nothing as usual, so I'll give most of the heel side of it to the Rougeaus, but there was an immense amount of electricity in this match.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Sorry about that. The crowd was off the charts. I mean, I laughed when Alfred goes, "I love him," about Duggan, which I thought was funny. More on Alfred and Schiavone in a minute, but the crowd was really into this, and there was a lot of intensity. Like at one point, I can't believe it wasn't. Another thing, JR, we were talking about if this aired at night, that they didn't bleep this out, but I don't know if it's Bravo. I think it's Bravo, and Duggan yells at him and calls him a son of a bitch, and it wasn't bleeped. So I'm stunned that wasn't taken out at all. So I'm almost thinking maybe this was live during the day, because number one, I could not believe that they would let that unedited Rockers debacle air, and I can't believe they didn't bleep out when Duggan called Bravo a son of a bitch in the middle of the ring, and it was very audible. It was not hidden. So in any event, there was something about the energy level in the match was off the charts. I don't know if it was just kind of the WrestleMania crowd. That's why I think, JR, you might be right. I really think maybe this was a match they could have done at WrestleMania 5. I really think they could have. And obviously a lot of it is Duggan's popularity. But the crowd was just red hot for this. Really red hot. Stunning. And I'm gonna give the match credit for that and give it a little bump in grade. Because after the great Hogan, Bossman Cage, and some of the other really good matches tonight, I thought this would kind of like peter out at the end, but it did not.
No,
it did not.
Nope.
So I'm gonna give credit to these six. I'll even give a little credit to Bravo, as much as he's a clumsy oaf, to really give this crowd some juice. And Duggan is I got to give him his due. Duggan is a crowd energizer. I got to give him his due for that. And this is Duggan and the Bushwhackers, two entities that I've never been huge fans of. I can't believe I'm crediting the Bushwhackers, Duggan, and Ronnie Garvin all in the same match. The fucking world must be ending, or I'm still drunk.
How fresh are the Bushwhackers here in the Fed?
8 months, 9 months.
Yeah, they came in
long.
I think their first MSG match was December, if I believe. If I remember correctly.
But long enough that they've gotten over with the crowd on Superstars and Challenge.
Oh, yeah. 1288 was their first MSG show. So they probably
they fought the
right
Bolsheviks
before that.
Yeah. So, but, they were just... It was a smart match to put last because, again, regardless of work rate or whatever, the Duggan and the Bushwhackers were over with the crowd, particularly the younger fans, and the Rougeaus and Bravo were three smarmy pricks. So it worked perfectly, and it was a good way to end the show. Crowd was red hot. I'm still trying to figure out. And I don't know if we got to look it up somehow. Maybe Pixels or something, but whether or not this show was actually live or if it was. If MSG aired it in the evening in prime time and it was taped, because I can't believe that they kept that. Duggan yelled "son of a bitch" pretty loud, and that's usually the kind of thing that Vince would poo-poo on in 1989. So I don't know. In any event, the crowd was hot, and it was a super last match for this show to send it out on a hot note as we get into WrestleMania. So 3 stars might be a bit much, but
no,
I really think all 6
depends what you're grading on. Like, it served its purpose 100%.
Yeah.
Like we said, it sent the crowd home happy. It, meshes 2 feuds together, which were cool. And I really do think, and I mean, this is a tease for next week when we do our Mania 5 build show. I do think you could have saved some time and crap off 5 by switching Garvin over to Bad News in a quick squash and then combining the other matches and doing this 6-person here. Like, I think that would have been the best way to go about that card. I think if you just replicate this match with maybe, probably 4 or 5 minutes less, given how stacked that card is, and then just let Bad News go over Garvin quick, and then you save from that stupid double countout you get with Bad News and Duggan, and instead of 2 worthless matches clogging the card, you just combine this into one, because these 6 guys have been kind of tied together anyway.
Exactly, and it was a good way. Again, everybody was into it. Big win at the end. So hot ending.
All right,
and we're out.
Awards time.
Awards.
I think match of the night is pretty easy here tonight.
Teenagers, my son just took a shower during my podcast.
Oh, okay.
Gotta love it.
They're gonna say took a shit, like on the road.
No.
On some of the matches we did.
Hogan, Bossman, we're all agreement there.
The cage. Oh yeah, definitely.
Match of the night.
Okay. Yep. The Cousin Junior for the worst match. I'm thinking we're probably all in agreement there as well. Rockin' Robin and Judy Martin.
Judy Martin.
For the second time.
Second time in. Yep. Pretty much.
All right, the Andre the Giant Award for the MVP of the night. I went with Hulk Hogan. It was his match. I mean, Boss Man is right there with him, but Hogan was the star. Hogan executed the suplex. I mean, we could go double. I try and avoid it where we can, so I'm going Hogan just because he's the star. But Boss Man is right there with him.
Boss Man for me.
Judy Martin for saving the...
No.
No, I'm only kidding. No, I'm only kidding. No, I agree. Hogan as well. Big time.
Okay.
Foot on the pedal.
All right, so Todd, Boss Man. All right, the Sandy Beach Award for the non-MVP of the night. I went there with Rocket Robin. Another obvious choice.
No doubt. No doubt.
Without question.
All right, best moment. I think, again, this is a pretty easy choice to me anyway. It's Hogan's superplex on Boss Man.
Superplex.
Big time. You could definitely tell that they had to hone it because he lands.
Mm-hmm.
He lands. Boss Man doesn't land totally clean. I'm sure they worked on it that night in Boston, and obviously we'll see it later on in the year. But it still was pretty amazing.
All right. Next we have the Morocco Award for the biggest juiced up guy of the night. I went Hercules on this one. We had some good contenders, but Herc looked the most robust.
Yeah, he definitely was. He definitely was going through the skin.
Paul Roma.
Oh, there you go. That's a good one.
Interesting. Yeah, we don't mention him a lot, JR, but he's always looking pretty tight.
Yeah.
Jesus.
All right, the Patera Award for the worst hair of the evening. I'm going away from Red Rooster as one of the last two with Rocket Robin.
Ugh.
Making it 3 for 3 for the bad awards here tonight. Her hair is fucking just as bad as her wrestling ability.
Yeah. I mean, Garvin's hair isn't great, but at least it kind of fits him. Her hair is just atrocious, along with everything else.
What do you think, Todd?
What do you think, Todd?
My hair pick is going to be Garvin because I brought it up. So I got to own it.
Lame.
Fair enough.
All right. Garvin there. Rocket Robin here.
I do want to say for MVP real quick before we do our grades. I want to give a little honorable mention to Tony Schiavone, though.
Yeah.
And I had said it. I said I was going to mention it in my comments, and I did a little bit, but he not only was really good, and look, no disrespect to Ronnie Tron worked his ass off. He may not know what the fuck he was talking about half the time, but he definitely didn't take any shows off. He just wasn't attuned to the product as he needed to be. But Tony really locked in. And not only for him, but I think you notice, JR, that it was in my opinion, it was no accident that Alfred was most motivated to be on the ball than he's been leading up to this. Like, I feel like Ron just kind of let him float around, whereas I really feel like Tony locked him in. Not only to be focused on the matches, but actually to be fairly funny and have good pointed, sharp remarks. So that's my opinion. That I think Tony deserves I wouldn't tie him in the award or anything, but Tony deserves credit for really being comfortable with a product that he didn't totally know yet. So just wanted to mention that. That's all.
All right. Finally, let's do our grades out of 10. I thought this was a really good show. It did have some down stuff, but it had a lot of top-end matches that we don't normally see on these shows. And we had, if you look at it up and down, we had a 3-star Garvin perfect match. We had a 4-star Hogan Boss Man, a 3-star Rockers Brainbusters, and then a really good show closer. I mean, that's a pretty good run for an MSG house show. So I went on the higher end of grades for these for me. I went 6.5, which is a pretty strong grade for a house show in my world. That pretty much, I think, I've probably topped out around there, and then 7 and above is saved more for TV shows or Great Saturday Night events. But I went 6.5 back in December. I went 6.5 in January. So, the stronger house shows, that's about where I tend to top off. So this was a really good show. I really enjoyed it. A lot of good stuff. What did you think, Todd?
7 out of 10 because of an all-time Hogan match for me.
Mm-hmm. Scott?
Oof! Wow. I tell you, Todd, I was not sure if I wanted to do 7. I gave the January show a 6.5, and the January show was good. February I gave 5.5, and I think this show was better than February.
Oh yeah.
I wanted to give it a 7, but I mean that if the Rock and Robin Judy match was even worth a 1.5, I might have given it 7, but I think it just drags. Is that being as bad the equal to Hogan Bossman being that good?
No way.
That's where you got to think about it.
No, because you get no
it
way. It
doesn't take away from it.
Because you get all that. You get that crap on every show. You don't get a 4-star classic on every show. Like,
True.
You shouldn't be shocked to get like a garbage match on these shows. I mean, that's every month we get one. So that does not take away. To me, this is a baseline for the house shows, and stuff like that is factored in.
Well, then I'm going to go with Todd and give it a 7. Because if that's the case, I mean, I had 3s up the wazoo. Perfect Garvin was great. Bossman Hogan speaks for itself. Rockers Brainbusters was great. I really liked the main event. I can't believe how much I liked the 6-man.
Yeah.
It was a really good, entertaining show to get us on that last stop before Atlantic City. So I got to give it its due. 7 out of 10.
Yep. No, 89's been a really good year so far. We've seen some good stuff. I think the turnover in the roster has really shown through.
Yes, big time.
So I think that's big. I think that's helping a lot. And we got some really clearly defined feuds, and we'll see how that carries into Mania. So, all right, Scott, we'll be back in 2 weeks' time for our special build. We'll have a trio of guests. And what we're going to pretty much do is kind of go through the card and almost rebook it a bit, I think, because it is a very bloated card that has a lot of matches that don't make a lot of sense. So we'll take some time and kind of talk through that, talk about the bill as a whole. And then the week after that, we'll be here with WrestleMania 5 with Mr. D'Amato. So really looking forward to that. It's a fun show to talk about, and the culmination, obviously, of a year's worth of stories with the Mega Powers. No Wrestling Warzone this week, so this is it for me until Talkin' Pop drops, but be sure to check that out when it does. I've mentioned it a couple times already, but it was a lot of fun to do. And, of course, main event was last week, Scott, so I'm guessing nothing this week for that.
No, main event, finally, after back-to-back weeks, we will be off this week. We'll be back next week. We'll talk about whatever shakeups are happening on the rosters tonight as we speak and tomorrow. And then, of course, it'll be our next installment of the New Japan Classic match picks, where we will talk about a guy who you and I both saw on Saturday night, Mr. Okada, and talk about his epic reign as IWGP champion. By the way, please, and I know Justin and his pants, his tremendous pants. And as JR mentioned, please check out last week's main event wrap-up. It was great. We don't get to have Kevin Kelly on a lot, but he did say he'll join us more. In fact, he said he may join us for future New Japan Classic match picks.
Nice.
Because a lot of the matches we watch on New Japan World, he narrated. So whether it was current matches or there were a couple we did in the past that he actually did voiceover for. So we are hoping to have more Kevin Kelly in our future on main event. But yes, this week we're off.
All right. Todd?
Anything?
Yeah. So you were talking about Talkin' Pop, and as I understand it, and having a little bit of influence, a little bit of rub around here, a little bit of the stroke, we're going to have Talkin' Pop come out in about 12 hours after this is dropped.
Very nice. Very
be
nice.
Looking for it.
Cool. Looking forward to it.
And if you're looking to listen to my shows, those are Conversation Comics, Marvel Age, and new show Binge Please, talking about streaming television. You can follow me on Twitter at Todd Weber Guitar for all your controversial political opinions and Sacramento Kings hot takes.
And you can listen to me on Binge Please, teaching Todd about comics, so be sure to check that out.
Yes. I learned much.
That was a lot of fun, even though it was like 2 a.m. for me, and I was half asleep, and I had to read Wikipedia for like half hour before we recorded to refresh myself on everything. I think it went well, given all those things.
Yeah, it was a good show, and people were responding well to the new show, so we'll see. I think you and I will talk, I believe, Jessica Jones next, so we'll see.
Yeah, look forward to that anytime. All right, that'll do it. We've been here for a while. Why don't we pack things up? PlaceToBeNation.com each and every day. Twitter, PlaceToBeNation. Facebook.com/PlaceToBeNation as well. For Scott and Todd, I'm Justin. We're out. Talk to you in a couple days.
And the Oreo, he rocks in the treetop all day long, popping and a singing his song. All the little birds on Jaybird Street love to hear the robin go tweet, tweet. Rockin' Robin, rockin' Robin, slow rockin' Robin, 'cause he's really gonna rock tonight. Well, the pretty little raven at the birdland stand taught him how to do the poppin'. it was grand. They started going steady and bless my soul. He outbopped the buzzard and the Oreo. He rocks in the treetop all the day long, hopping and a bopping and a singing his song.